Outfitters.
You know, I don't know if you remember. I never saw the show in the '80s. There was a show called Dear John, and the guy came home and there was a Dear John letter.
Dear John.
Did you ever see it?
That. Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
And so his girl was just gone.
It's one of the funniest Dumb and Dumber lines. I got a John Deere letter.
You've got a similar story, right?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how I got into all of this. And by the way, I do appreciate you asking to tell that story because it's kind of shaped who I am, and it's actually one of the pinned tweets that I have, or the pinned tweet that I have talks about how like the worst days of my life got led to the most important days. And I was married for 5 years to my absolute like crush of my life, right? I met this young lady when I was 22 years old. She was 21. You're gonna laugh when you say it. She was a spokesperson for the Hooters Corporation.
I remember this part of the story.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So she was one of the calendar girls who had gotten like second to the international swimsuit pageant that they have in Vegas, and she had all of a sudden kind of rose through the ranks through hard work to become the spokesperson. So whenever they would open up a new store, she was the person. Like she would do the commercials with Lee Corso on their campaigns, and they have a new opening of a store, she would there.
She's what you don't see at Hooters now.
A little bit different. So married for 5 years, never fight, never anything like that. She's in Miami for the Super Bowl, and I'm doing one of my radio shows, and I like a fill-in thing in Las Vegas for the Super Bowl. So I come home after Vegas. I remember vividly. I just got in the cab. I get home. We just tore it up in Vegas, right? Like it was just, I can't wait to fall asleep. Open the door, walk in, house is empty. I needed the mattress that you guys were just talking about. Right. No mattress.
Wow. Sleepoutfitters.com for
yes.
Peter.
Took to bed, too.
And TV's ripped off the wall.
Oh, my gosh.
Furniture gone. Both dogs gone.
Wow.
Washer and dryer. Everything gone. The only thing that was still left in the house is I had had one of those huge, remember the huge projection 65-inch televisions that weighed 9,000 pounds?
Terrible
I
picture.
had that.
Yeah.
I had an Xbox 360, and there was a mattress in the bedroom. That was it. Okay? And I was like, oh, my God. Like, somebody just broke into my house while I was gone. So I called my wife, and I was like, hey, are you
We've been
okay?
cleaned out.
Yeah, no, seriously. And it goes to voicemail. Call again. Goes to voicemail. Call again. Goes to voicemail. Remember the phones, and it might still do it now, that after like 2 rings, if you decline a call, it then goes to voicemail.
Yeah.
And like the 9th time I called it, like I could tell somebody had declined the call, and I'm like, this ain't right. So finally I call again, and she's like, I don't want to talk. I'm blah, 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 blah. Like, I just need a new start, whatever. I'm like, and then click. Like, what in the world? Like, I didn't even get the Dear John letter. I'm like, this is just like, and then I started thinking, I was like, did she get kidnapped, while in Miami, and this is a deal? And then I checked the bank account's empty. I'm like, what is happening?
She cleaned out the bank account.
So come to find out.
She took the dogs, bro.
Yeah.
I know.
Kind of like a midlife model crisis or whatever ended up happening is that, and I understand it. I mean, she's 27 at that time, and she's hanging out with all these other, pageant bikini, models and stuff like that who are getting flown halfway across the country to go to LA for the weekend. Or I'm taking this person to Europe, and here I am working in the gas and oil industry, trying to make a career and try to do a little sports talk radio on the side. And I guess at some point she was just like, you know what? I've hung out with all these other girls. This life looks a little bit more fun. I saw her one time again the rest of my life.
I was about to ask that. So you're completely out of touch now.
Out of touch. And
Please tell me she's 185 now.
So she is still a very nice, attractive young lady.
Okay. Yeah.
But come to find, I had introduced her to one of my college teammate, one of my best friends. So her best friend married one of my best friends. So the only time I saw her once again in my life was about a year and a half later when we were both in the wedding.
Wow. No, seriously.
Oh,
you didn't walk her down the aisle, right?
What's that? No. We changed that.
No, but what happened to the dogs?
So
and were you
I
really
love this format, by the way, because people are probably they're like, this is the most boring story ever.
No, this is incredible.
But you're a big dog guy, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I own them. Yes, I have a dog named Saban and a dog named Peyton. Now, 2 corgis. But yes, at the time there were 2 little Chihuahuas, one named Minnie and one named Manu after Manu Ginobili, because I was living in San Antonio at the time. So there's so many facets to the story. And so at one point during all of this proceedings, I I find out that in the state of Texas, if basically no matter who's at fault, you get half, right? One side gets half, the other side gets half. That's just how it is, right? So the day before the proceedings, I was going to have to take all this credit card. I was going to get a bad end of the deal. 401k gone, house gone, stuff like that. But I had always said that she could have both dogs. I didn't really care about the dogs at that point. It was a moot point. But the day before, I went to the lawyers and I said, how about this? I will give you one of the dogs. I'm going to take one of the dogs, but I get the 401k, I get the house, I get the furniture, I get all of this stuff. And my lawyer's like, there's no way that she'll say that. Like, I wouldn't even allow her to even look at a deal like this. And I was like, I think she likes the dogs. I went there. We offered her. I said, actually, I'm going to take a dog unless I get this. Signed the paperwork, done it. And it was awesome. It's like a $150,000 Chihuahua that I could care less for. So I got it.
Yeah, that's a dog person.
So, yeah.
The ex is.
Way long story
But
in the payoff of that.
The ticker read, Manu traded for cash.
Considerations. That's great. That's why you're good. But so what led to that was so many dark days of like, oh my God, what happened? Like, what did I do? And like, my life is over because everything. Like, she was my personality. Like, I lived my life through my relationship with her, about how she was someone, and I was lucky enough to be her husband, right? And so I started looking at it and like, yeah, man, this stinks. Like, what do I really want to do? And so my dad gave me the best piece of advice ever. He said, because I was having trouble sleeping, he goes, do you think that you did everything you could to be a good, faithful, loving husband? I said, absolutely. He goes, then you should never fall asleep, without a problem. He's like, every single night you should never lose any sleep. He's like, if you can answer that question, then you're good. Slept like a baby after that, and the next day I was kind of like, all right, let's do this. What are we going to do? And it was one day I wanted to do sports talk radio, and that led to that. And then, 9-10 years later, I'm re-signing a deal and getting free socks from SEC Network. So it's
and Nut Dust.
And that does. I mean, that's awesome.
You're a friend of ours. Never met her, and I'm sure she's a sweet lady. But there's part of me that hopes she's living the All-American Reject song. You remember that one? That every time, like, her husband is a big SEC football fan, and she has to sit through Peter doing halftime and all that. Like, that could have been my guy.
How do you like me now?
How do you like me now?
There had to have been something there, though. Did she marry somebody rich?
She did not. She ended up marrying a assistant manager at a Hooters. Believe it or not.
Please tell me he's a
keep
huge
it in the family.
I will say this, and again, it took a long time to come to terms with that. I was upset with that, but I ultimately really realized that, like, the life that she lives now is probably fantastic, and she's probably happy, and maybe that might have been her path, that it just took a weird journey to get there that worked out well, and I would have never had the opportunity to do what I do in my dream, because I would have never chased it had I not had that.
You were living for her, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what it was. My whole persona was what she was accomplishing, not what I wanted to accomplish, right? And then I would have never met the absolute love of my life, the most important person, my wife, and I wouldn't have the two unbelievable kids that I have. So, like, I go back and look at, like, things that just seem like, oh my God, the worst thing to ever happen. And everyone, I think, sometimes says, well, God has a plan. I'm not the most religious person, but I used to always think that, well, that's just, they're just trying to convince themselves that things will be okay. And whether or not it is true or not, I'm like, none of that stuff would have happened in my life, the good stuff, had this weird stuff happened, and I would have just wallowed in it as opposed to be like, all right, let's roll. And so anytime that I've had a setback in my life, I'm like, that sucks, but it's only motivation to try to go do something I want to do.
And I was upset about Cam Akers rupturing his ACL yesterday.
I had to do an hour with this guy after the Cam Akers announcement.
He brought it up to every guest, by the way.
Cam Akers.
Yeah. Rick Neuheisel didn't give a damn.
No, he really didn't.
And one of our interns, Senna, she's hanging on every word here.
Oh, right? Just look at the studio audience here. Next Round Live is awesome.
So real quick before we wrap up, because you said something, I'll never forget this. We were at the Hoover Met SEC baseball tournament. This put a lump in my throat. And I went home and told my wife, and she's like, oh, my gosh. And I never thought of this. So you're adopted.
Yeah. So my dad, cancer survivor, and that's why I became such an LSU fan, is that they couldn't have kids, so they adopted me. My brother was adopted, and my sister was adopted as well, too. But so they adopted me when he was graduating from LSU. He was a late bloomer. And so, like, 1986 is when he graduated, and I'm 7 or 8 years old at that time. So we would sit in the student section at every LSU sporting event.
Oh, cool.
And so the amount of language that I learned, like as a 7 and 8 year old,
it
was always my dad's like, do not tell your mother what you're going to hear. I was like, mother blanking right, Dad.
Now pass me some more of that brown
yeah,
water.
Come on, man. Like,
so you said this, where your wife was pregnant with Bo at the time.
Yeah. So, what, 4 years now ago.
That's right. And we were at the Hoover Met SEC baseball tournament, and you said Bo will be born, and it will be the first time I have ever met anyone that has my blood.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
amazing. Crazy
Related
to
to.
think about. That is great. You'd
Yeah.
never met anybody you were related to until your daughter was born.
That moment, and it's so weird that whenever you're in a delivery room and you're counting, there's like 8 people there, and it's chaos and stuff like that. And like at one point, there's 8 people in the room. A split second later, there's 9.
I know.
Like
It's nuts.
what? Like that person, like I created that. That is just nuts.
Yep.
And then every time that she's screaming, and I'm like, "What is going on?" I'm like, "I still love you." That's just, it's awesome.
No, that
And
put a lump in my throat to think about. You had never met anybody you were actually blood related to until your daughter was
And
born.
did your ex know that? The one that packed everything up?
Yeah.
I love that. Lance goes back to
Yeah.
that story.
You don't realize this. We're going to hate on her for like
Oh, my
18 or
gosh.
19
I
more
know.
shows.
There's an acronym for her. See you next.
And you know, and what's crazy is again, like I haven't ever talked to her since 15 years,
Right.
And I almost want to thank her, right?
No,
like in a weird
yeah.
way, because I'm thinking that I'd probably be working in some cube or some project manager, being in the
Yep.
oil and gas industry, and the only reason why I got into that any of that stuff is because remember Tony Bruno and Andrew Siciliano. Okay, they used to do the morning show on Fox Sports
yes.
Radio. It was an unbelievable show.
The Goats.
And they had a show. They had right after American Idol had just launched, and they did a thing called "Be Andrew Siciliano for a Day."
Right.
And it was a contest, and it was all throughout the country. And I put together a tape to audition, to be that, and I ended up winning it. I got to fly out to Fox Sports Radio for a day, met Pat O'Brien, go to Access Hollywood, and I did that show, which kind of led to an opportunity of opening a door of Sports Talk Radio and Ticket 760 in San Antonio. That started the journey of all of this.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Hey, you were the first that ever did the gender reveal that I remember. I know you weren't the first to do it.
No, but he's
But
got
you
one
were
of the best ones.
Well, you did have one of the best, but it was the first one that I remember. And since that was, 4 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah.
Since that, people have died doing gender reveals. They've burned down entire forests.
So I did the golf ball, the exploding golf ball over at Pebble Beach, number 7, the most
That's right.
maybe the most iconic hole in all of golf. And so we did it, and I'm wearing pink because I think it's going to be a girl. My wife Lauren, she's wearing blue, thinking it's going to be a boy. Boom! It explodes pink. It's awesome, right? Well, Pebble Beach sends it out in their little Twitter, and I had already sent it out on Twitter. And next day, I'm flying home, and I get all these texts and stuff like that. And I'm like, what is going on? The Today Show ran it.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And I'm hearing from people I hadn't talked to in 10 years. Oh, my God, we saw you on the Today Show, and this is the same. You work for ESPN? I didn't know this. I was like, thanks for being such a great friend.
God, I hope your first wife loves the
Yeah.
Today Show.
Yeah, I bet she didn't text.
I hope she was watching that.
They kill me for my cheesy lines. So we'll end the interview with this.
Oh, come on.
Your family tree is growing, but please know you'll always be part of our forest.
Oh, my
Jesus.
Awful. Sorry, Peter.
Do I have to hug you after that?
No.
Such a good
Run.
interview
But
until
you
that
do get a
point.
complimentary bottle of Redmont
Yeah,
vodka.
we will give you a bottle of vodka.
That's right.
We're going to give you a Sharpie to paint some eyebrows on him.
Our show is being brought to you by Redmont Vodka, Charles Barkley owned premium spirits, 8-time distilled, and it's gluten-free right here. Barkley owns it, friend of ours, and we've got a complimentary bottle for Peter Burns and all the guests that stop by that are not student athletes.
Now, look, Redmont Vodka, their aim is clarity in taste, color, and smell. It's vodka perfection. Redmont Vodka is made from corn, which not only makes it gluten-free, but also provides a smooth finish that doesn't have that harsh aftertaste. Available at your local package and ABC stores. Fastest growing distillery in Alabama is Redmont, now available in Georgia and Mississippi, soon to be nationwide, and I'm sure Peter will knock some out before his nap and before he dusts up with our nut dust.
Let me tell you this, though, and I'm looking at the clock here, and we're like 40 minutes into this, right?
Uh-huh.
This is so much fun, and I think this is kind of the future of being able to, like, I've never been able to tell that story and share that type of stuff, because traditionally when we do this stuff, you know how it is in our industry, it's, hey, you got to be clock integrity, and you got 9 minutes until we got to go to a commercial break, and we got this, and, like, this feels so much more natural because people want to connect with stories, and, like, the fact that you guys get a chance to do that now, like, I'm extremely jealous because I've got some great storytellers on my desk on network television, Sirius XM, and I got a producer in my ear going, hey, we got to go. We got to get to the commercial break and this. So, like, I love this. You guys are crushing this thing, and I'm immensely jealous. So.
Well, we always want to program the SEC Network because in our old job, it would be up with no sound. And sometimes when they would not have your show on, which we did not understand if you were doing it, why it wasn't on the SEC Network all the time. Sometimes we'd be watching an Alabama basketball game from not even a good Alabama year
from
in
the
the
Godfrey era.
No,
yeah, from Mark Godfrey. Too.
Missouri volleyball.
Yeah, Missouri volleyball.
It was a powerhouse.
Here's a hint. Just clear the programming 2 hours every morning, throw 2 couches and a chair on the SEC Network set and let you host it, and you guys sit there and talk about anything.
Again,
if you've got vodka, it will add to it.
Or throw us a bone and just let us do an hour.
Seriously.
There's a sales pitch.
You know, I think we need to have more. We've always looked at the prism of television and radio in a certain way, and for the longest time, for 70, 80 years, it's always worked a certain way. But now with the technology and what you could do is, like, people just want good content, and especially around this stuff, right? People hang on every single word for around SEC sports and athletics, and we have such great, bigger-than-life personalities like Charles Barkley and stuff like that. So to have more storytelling, like, this is what it's about. So I'm happy for you guys, and
thank you, Peter.
It'll be awesome.
The girls who are helping us this week, our interns and friends, Senna's going to be our reporter at Alabama on campus this year for the next round.
Awesome.
And we met a gentleman from the Winfrey out in the mall earlier who told us an amazing story that he was dead for 45 minutes.
That's hard to do.
Yeah, and that they kept him alive just with his.
You of all people, I figure would be the closest that would have had that. Like the third time I was revived.
You missed my story earlier.
I drove him home in an Alfa Romeo last night. But it was amazing stories like that. I hung on his every word, and your story today is my takeaway from this. Nick Saban could say whatever he wants to say today. My Peter Burns story, sitting here on this couch, is what I want.
Which one?
Well, and you being naked with one eyebrow, listening to me and watching me on television.
Life-changing,
from a contractor. Right? I can't wait to call my wife and tell her about that.
Right.
It's gonna be a
Sweetie,
highlight.
I'm so excited. What about the contract? No.
I've made it.
I got interviewed today by a guy with no eyebrows. Okay, that's Peter Burns, SEC Network, brought to you in part by our friends at Alfa Romeo, who have staged us out here in the mall. The old McMillan's Big and Tall right here, just off Radio Row.
You and I both in Stelvio's right now, and right now you can get $3,500 off the all-new 2021 Alfa Romeo, not only the Stelvio's, the Giulias, plus 1.9% for 72 months. Don't miss this opportunity to drive an Italian legend at Alfa Romeo of Birmingham, I-459, exit 27 Grants Mill Road, or online, alfaromeo USA of Birmingham.com.